Captain Maya Rodriguez was having a perfectly mediocre Tuesday morning when the universe decided to ruin her day. She'd been enjoying her coffee and contemplating the futility of military bureaucracy when the emergency klaxons started blaring across the base. Not the fire drill klaxons. Not the tornado warning klaxons. The aliens are here and they're probably not friendly klaxons. Great, Maya muttered, watching her coffee ripple in the mug. Just fantastic. 20 minutes later, she found herself squeezed into the Pentagon's crisis room, watching a 7-foot-tall purple alien with too many eyes deliver humanity's death sentence. Ambassador Klaxon, as he'd introduced himself with all the pompous flair of a Vegas lounge singer, stood before the assembled world leaders like he was doing them a favor. "Citizens of Earth," Klaxon announced, his voice carrying the kind of condescending tone usually reserved for explaining cryptocurrency to your grandmother. "The Galactic Council has reviewed your species application for membership. You have been found wanting." Maya snorted softly. "There was an application?" "The terms are simple," Klaxon continued, apparently unhearing or uncaring about Maya's commentary. "Surrender unconditionally, accept vassal status under the Zephyrian Empire, and your species will be permitted to continue existing as manual laborers and entertainment." President Williams, bless his stubborn heart, didn't even pause. "Ambassador Klaxon, with all due respect, I have a counter-proposal. How about you take your terms and—" "I shall interpret that as a refusal," Klaxon interrupted smoothly. "How disappointing. But entirely predictable. Your species has shown remarkable consistency in choosing the difficult path." Maya had to admit, the alien had done his homework. Humans were indeed specialists in doing things the hard way. "Very well," Klaxon's multiple eyes gleamed with what might have been satisfaction. "Since you insist on resistance, you will face our war beasts. These creatures have conquered 17 star systems. They have never known defeat." The screens around the room flickered to life, showing massive transport ships hovering in Earth's atmosphere. The bay doors opened, and Maya felt her coffee grow cold in her hands. The first wave descended like a nightmare fever dream. Crystalline spider tanks the size of city buses, their translucent legs clicking against the air as they fell, each one bristling with energy weapons that hummed with barely contained violence. Behind them came the plasma-breathing wyverns, their biomechanical wings spreading wide enough to cast shadows over entire city blocks, that rote sacks glowing with the promise of incineration. "Behold," Klaxon announced with theatrical pride, "the Crystarch Hunters and the Pyrowing Destroyers. They have reduced mighty civilizations to ash and memory." Maya watched the feeds from around the globe as the alien war beasts landed with earth-shaking impacts. New York, London, Tokyo, Sydney. Every major city suddenly had new, extremely hostile neighbors who looked like they'd stepped out of a particularly creative nightmare. "Impressive," President Williams said, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "Our response will be proportional." Maya nearly choked on her coffee. Proportional? Against crystalline death spiders and flying flamethrowers? She'd seen Earth's military response to alien invasions in movies. It usually involved a lot of explosions, some heroic sacrifices, and a suspiciously attractive scientist discovering the alien's one weird weakness at the last possible moment. Reality, as always, was going to be messier. "Your primitive weapons will prove inadequate," Klaxon said with certainty that bordered on religious conviction. "These creatures were bred for war across 1,000 generations. They know only victory." Maya looked around the room at the assembled military leaders and politicians, all of whom were trying to project confidence while clearly having no idea what they were dealing with. General Brass was already barking orders about deploying conventional forces because apparently throwing tanks at interdimensional war beasts was Plan A. Through the window, Maya could see the first explosions blooming on the horizon as the war beasts made contact with Earth's defenders. She had a sinking feeling that humanity's famous stubborn streak was about to meet its match. But then again, she thought as she finished her now cold coffee, Earth had always been full of surprises. 6 hours later, Maya's prediction about the messiness of reality was proving depressingly accurate. The war room had transformed from a hub of confident military planning into something resembling a very expensive panic room with better coffee. General Brass stood at the tactical display, his face turning an impressive shade of red as he gestured wildly at the holographic battlefield. How are they shrugging off direct hits from Hellfire missiles like mosquito bites? Sir, his aide stammered, the preliminary reports suggest their exoskeletons are some kind of adaptive bio-armor. It's literally evolving to counter our weapons in real time. Maya watched from her corner as Earth's finest military minds collectively discovered that decades of preparing for human enemies hadn't exactly prepared them for crystalline spider tanks that learned from every failed attack. The Crystarch Hunters were currently redecorating downtown Miami, having apparently decided that human architecture was insufficiently artistic for their tastes. What about the Air Force? Brass demanded. The Pyrowing Destroyers are faster than our jets and can literally breathe plasma, sir. We lost half a squadron over Denver when they tried to engage. Maya sipped her third cup of coffee and wondered if it was too late to fake her own death and retire to a nice quiet bunker in Montana. She'd joined the military to help animals, not to watch humanity get schooled by creatures that looked like they'd been designed by a committee of particularly vindictive science fiction writers. Dr. Rodriguez. General Brass's voice cut through her peaceful fantasies of hermit life. You're our xenobiologist consultant. What's your assessment? Maya looked up from her coffee. My assessment? We're screwed, sir. The room fell silent except for the distant rumble of explosions from the news feeds. Care to elaborate? President Williams asked with the kind of forced calm that suggested he was also considering the hermit bunker option. Well, Mr. President, we've been approaching this like a conventional war. Send tanks, deploy missiles, shoot the bad guys until they stop moving. The problem is, these aren't conventional enemies. They're living weapons designed by a civilization that's presumably conquered 17 star systems using the exact same creatures. So what do you suggest? Brass asked, his tone suggesting he was hoping for some kind of miracle weapon hidden in Maya's veterinary background. Maya had actually been thinking about that. Her background wasn't just veterinary medicine. She'd spent 8 years as an army specialist working with military working dogs, tracking animals in hostile environments, and developing an almost supernatural understanding of animal behavior. The Brass had always joked that she could talk to animals, which was ridiculous. She couldn't talk to them. She could just understand them better than most people understood other humans. I need to see one of these things up close, she said finally. Absolutely not, Brass replied immediately. These creatures are hostile alien war beasts. We're not sending our xenobiologist into the field to have a chat with them. With respect, sir, our current strategy of throwing conventional weapons at them isn't exactly working. Maybe it's time to try understanding what we're actually fighting. President Williams leaned forward. What exactly are you proposing, Captain? Maya set down her coffee and tried to project more confidence than she felt. Give me a small team, some recording equipment, and access to field data from every encounter so far. Let me study these things the way I'd study any other predator. Find their patterns, their behaviors, their weaknesses. And then what? Brass asked skeptically. Then I figure out how to beat them. Maya paused. Or at least how to make them think twice about redecorating our cities. The room erupted in discussions, half the officials arguing that it was too dangerous, the other half pointing out that their current approach was working about as well as a chocolate teapot. Finally, President Williams raised his hand for silence. Captain Rodriguez, you have 48 hours and whatever resources you need. Because if we can't find a solution soon, we might not have cities left to defend. Maya nodded, already mentally preparing for what was probably going to be the worst field assignment of her career. I'll need a research assistant, preferably one with a sense of humor about potentially being eaten by aliens. Why humor? The president asked. Because if we're going to die horribly, we might as well laugh about it first. As the meeting broke up and officials scattered to manage the ongoing crisis, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something important. These creatures were impressive, sure, but they were still just animals. Highly advanced, weaponized, interdimensional animals, but animals nonetheless. And Maya had never met an animal she couldn't understand. The trick was going to be surviving long enough to figure them out. Maya's research assistant turned out to be Fred, an AI system that the Pentagon had originally designed for logistics but had apparently been repurposed for whatever Captain Rodriguez needs, no questions asked. Fred had a pleasant synthetic voice and an unfortunate tendency to provide statistics at inappropriate moments. Captain Rodriguez, Fred announced as Maya boarded the modified research helicopter. I feel compelled to inform you that the statistical probability of surviving direct contact with hostile alien war beasts is approximately 12%. Thanks, Fred. That's exactly what I needed to hear right now. You did request an assistant with a sense of humor about potentially being eaten by aliens. I am attempting to comply. Maya couldn't argue with that logic. Where are we starting? Given the global distribution of alien incursions, I recommend beginning in Australia. The continent has reported the highest concentration of both alien and terrestrial fauna interactions. Of course it's Australia, Maya muttered as the helicopter banked south. Why wouldn't we start with the continent that's already trying to kill everything that lives on it? 3 hours later, Maya found herself crouched behind a termite mound the size of a small building, watching a Crystarch Hunter square off against what appeared to be a very irritated saltwater crocodile. The crocodile was roughly 1/10 the size of the alien war beast, but seemed entirely unconcerned by this mathematical disadvantage. Fred, are you recording this? Affirmative, Captain. I should note that the crocodile's behavior is highly unusual. Crocodilia typically avoid confrontations with significantly larger predators. The crocodile lunged with speed that defied physics, clamping its jaws around one of the spider tank's crystalline legs. The Crystarch Hunter's energy weapons swiveled toward its attacker, but before they could fire, the crocodile performed what could only be described as a death roll with prejudice. The crystalline legs snapped with a sound like breaking glass. Fred, did that crocodile just? Maya stared as the war beast stumbled, its remaining legs scrambling for purchase on the muddy riverbank. Yes, Captain. The crocodile appears to have identified a structural weakness in the alien's bio-armor and exploited it with precision that suggests either remarkable intelligence or extraordinary luck. Maya watched as more crocodiles emerged from the water. Not just one or two, but dozens. They moved with coordinated purpose that had nothing to do with luck and everything to do with tactical thinking. This isn't right, Maya whispered. Crocodiles don't hunt in coordinated packs. They're ambush predators, not team players. Captain, I'm detecting similar anomalous behavior patterns in fauna reports from around the globe. Wolves in Siberia have been observed using complex flanking maneuvers against Pyrowing Destroyers. Giant Pacific octopi have been employing cooperative hunting strategies that exceed their documented intelligence levels. Maya pulled out her binoculars and swept the horizon. What she saw made her question everything she thought she knew about Earth's ecosystem. A wedgie-tailed eagle circled overhead, but it wasn't hunting small prey. It was conducting aerial reconnaissance, calling out positions to a pack of dingoes below. The dingoes weren't just running around randomly. They were setting up what looked suspiciously like an ambush formation. Fred, pull up the global fauna activity reports from the last week. Certainly, Captain. Analyzing, oh my. This is unprecedented. Data scrolled across Maya's tablet. Grizzly bears in Alaska moving in organized formations. Army ants in the Amazon constructing what appeared to be military fortifications. Killer whales off the coast of Norway engaging in what marine biologists were describing as tactical exercises. They're not just fighting back, Maya breathed. They're organizing. Like Tuya. Captain, if I may offer a hypothesis based on the available data. Go ahead, Fred. Arium. It appears that Earth's fauna has been significantly underperforming in the presence of humans. The current threat level may have triggered evolutionary behavioral adaptations that were previously dormant. Maya watched as the crocodiles finished dismantling the Crystarch Hunter with the kind of methodical efficiency that would have impressed a military demolitions expert. You're saying they've been holding back? The evidence suggests that Earth's creatures possess capabilities far exceeding what humans have observed. The question is why they chose to conceal these abilities until now. Maya looked around at the Australian landscape with new eyes. Every creature she could see was moving with purpose. Not the random purpose of animals going about their daily survival routines, but the focused purpose of soldiers preparing for war. Fred, what if we've been thinking about this all wrong? What if Earth isn't just another planet with some moderately dangerous wildlife? Please elaborate, Captain. What if Earth is the monster planet, and everything living here is a potential apex predator that's just been playing nice? As if in response to her words, a huntsman spider the size of a dinner plate dropped onto her helmet and tapped out what sounded suspiciously like Morse code before scuttling away. Fred, please tell me you didn't record that spider just giving me tactical information. I'm afraid I cannot tell you that, Captain, because that would be a lie. Maya stared after the spider, then looked back at the crocodiles, who seemed to be organizing a victory celebration that involved synchronized tail slapping. We need to visit every continent, she said finally. I have a feeling we're about to discover that humanity has been sharing the planet with the galaxy's most dangerous creatures, and we never even knew it. Shall I calculate the probability of success for this endeavor? Don't you dare, Fred. Some things are better left as surprises. Maya's world tour of Earth's hidden military-industrial complex turned out to be simultaneously the most terrifying and most inspiring experience of her life. Fred had upgraded their transportation to a stealth aircraft that could allegedly avoid detection by both alien and terrestrial forces, though Maya suspected the latter was more important given what they were discovering. Their first ocean dive off the Mariana Trench nearly ended in disaster, but not for the reasons Maya had expected. Captain, Fred announced through the submersible's comm system, I'm detecting massive sonar signatures rising from the deep ocean trenches. Multiple contacts, extremely large. Maya peered through the reinforced viewport and felt her understanding of marine biology collapse like a house of cards in a hurricane. Rising from the depths came creatures that belonged in prehistoric nightmares, not modern oceans. A giant squid with tentacles the length of city buses, followed by what could only be described as a megalodon's bigger, angrier cousin. Fred, those species are supposed to be extinct, or at least limited to much smaller sizes. Captain, I believe we need to revise our assumptions about what constitutes extinct versus strategically concealed. The giant squid approached the submersible with what Maya could only describe as curiosity. One massive tentacle tapped against the viewport in a pattern that was definitely not random. It's trying to communicate, Maya whispered. Captain, shall I attempt to establish a translation protocol? I knew it. What followed was the most surreal conversation of Maya's career. The squid, who Fred eventually determined was called something roughly equivalent to Deep Thinker of the Crushing Depths, explained through a combination of tentacle movements and bioluminescent displays that the ocean's apex predators had been aware of the surface world's activities for millennia. They'd simply chosen not to interfere. Until now. The sky swimmer's Deep Thinker pulsed, threaten all waters. The deep councils have voted. War songs will be sung. Maya left the ocean with a commitment from creatures she'd never imagined existed to provide what Deep Thinker had described as crushing assistance from below. The Amazon rainforest proved equally revelatory. Maya found herself sitting in a clearing, surrounded by poison dart frogs the size of her thumb, having what appeared to be a strategy meeting. Fred had somehow managed to translate their chemical communications into human language, which led to the bizarre experience of discussing military tactics with amphibians. The small loud ones, announced a particularly vibrant blue frog who Fred identified as a spokesperson, have observed the crystal walkers. Their joint's weakness are, the venom makers can target these failures points. You're volunteering to be biological warfare agents? Maya asked, feeling like she was losing her grip on reality. We are warriors small but deadly certain. The tree kingdoms will mobilize assistance the ground forces. Army ants, as it turned out, had been conducting military exercises in the Amazon canopy for decades. They'd developed engineering capabilities that would have impressed human combat engineers constructing bridges, tunnels, and fortifications with efficiency that bordered on miraculous. The Arctic segment of Maya's recruitment tour nearly killed her, but not from the cold. She'd been expecting to meet some cooperative polar bears and maybe a few wolf packs. What she found was a fully organized military structure that had apparently been operating under human radar for generations. Captain Fred announced as their Arctic transport approached the coordinates. "I'm detecting what appears to be a large-scale military installation." "That's impossible. There are no human military bases in this sector." "Captain, I did not specify that the installation was human in origin." Maya stared through the windscreen at what looked like an Arctic fortress constructed entirely of ice, bone, and organic materials. Polar bears moved through the structure with purpose, while Arctic wolves served as what appeared to be communication runners between different sections. The commanding polar bear, a massive male that Fred estimated at over 1,200 pounds, greeted Maya with what she eventually realized was a formal military salute adapted for quadrupedal anatomy. "Welcome, Skypack Leader," the bear rumbled through Fred's translation system. "The ice territories have prepared for the sky threat. Warriors, stand ready." Maya spent 2 hours receiving briefings from Arctic predators about defensive positions, supply chains, and communication networks that spanned the entire Arctic Circle. The wolves had developed a relay system that could transmit messages across thousands of miles and hours. The polar bears had constructed defensive installations that would have impressed Roman engineers. "How long has this been going on?" Maya asked the commanding bear. "Since the first Skywalkers fell," came the reply. "We knew they would return. Ice memory holds all things." By the time Maya's transport lifted off from the Arctic, she was carrying recruitment agreements from creatures she'd never imagined could organize at such levels. Each species had agreed to coordinate with human military forces under her command, but though she suspected the reality was that she was being granted the honor of pretending to command forces that were already perfectly capable of managing themselves. "Fred," she said as they headed back toward base, "what are the odds that every apex predator on Earth has been secretly preparing for interplanetary warfare?" "Based on our observations, Captain, I would estimate those odds at approximately 100%. "And what are the odds that humans are the only species on Earth that didn't know about it?" "Also approximately 100%, Captain." Maya leaned back in her seat and tried to process the magnitude of what they'd discovered. Earth wasn't just inhabited by dangerous creatures. Earth was a planet-sized military installation populated by apex predators who had been conducting strategic planning and tactical preparation for threats that humanity hadn't even known existed. "Fred, I think we're about to give Ambassador Klaxon the surprise of his very long alien life." "Captain, shall I calculate the probability of alien forces successfully conquering a planet defended by coordinated apex predators with millennia of tactical experience?" Maya grinned for the first time in days. "Don't bother, Fred. I think we both know that math is about to get very interesting." The coordinated global assault began at dawn, and Maya had the best seat in the house to watch the galaxy's most overconfident military force discover that they had severely underestimated their opponents. "All units, this is command," Maya announced from her mobile headquarters, feeling slightly ridiculous about pretending to command forces that had been organizing themselves since before humans invented agriculture. "Operation Planetary Pest Control is a go." The first phase began in the oceans. Maya watched through satellite feeds as massive shapes rose from deep-sea trenches around the globe. The alien transport ships hovering over major coastal cities suddenly found themselves under assault from creatures that made their war beasts look like particularly aggressive house cats. A Pyrowing Destroyer squadron approaching San Francisco met their match in the form of a giant Pacific octopus that had apparently been studying human submarine warfare tactics. The creature emerged from the depths with timing that would have impressed a Swiss watchmaker, wrapping tentacles around 3 alien flyers simultaneously and dragging them beneath the surface before they could react. "Fred, are you getting this?" "Yes, Captain. I'm also receiving communication from Deep Thinker of the Crushing Depths. The translation reads, 'Sky swimmers learn ocean rules now. Crushing lesson begins.'" Maya grinned as reports flooded in from coastal cities around the world. The aliens' aerial superiority was rapidly becoming a liability as Earth's oceanic apex predators demonstrated that three-dimensional warfare wasn't limited to air and land. Phase 2 commenced in the urban areas, where the Crystarch Hunters were discovering that their adaptive bio-armor had some unexpected limitations. In New York, a coordinated assault by the city's rat population proved that superior numbers and intimate knowledge of urban terrain could overcome technological advantages. But it was the larger predators that really stole the show. Maya watched in fascination as grizzly bears emerged from forests around Seattle, moving with tactical precision that would have impressed Special Forces commanders. The bears had apparently spent decades observing human military exercises and had developed improvements to standard flanking maneuvers. A Crystarch hunter attempting to establish a forward position in downtown Seattle found itself surrounded by 12 grizzly bears employing what Fred identified as a modified pincer movement with adaptive positioning based on the enemy's weapon orientation. Captain Fred announced, "I'm receiving reports that General Brass is attempting to claim credit for the coordinated bear assault on Seattle. Let me guess. He's calling it a brilliant tactical deployment of indigenous bioassets?" The exact phrase he used was strategic utilization of locally sourced organic military resources. Maya's response was interrupted by one of the most satisfying sights of her military career. On the main screen, General Brass was standing in front of news cameras, gesturing confidently toward a tactical display while explaining his brilliant strategy for defeating the alien invasion. Behind him, completely unnoticed by the general but clearly visible to the cameras, stood a massive grizzly bear. The bear was watching Brass with the kind of expression that suggested it was forming opinions about the general's leadership capabilities. The bear's expression shifted to what could only be described as judgmental disappointment. It fixed its gaze directly on General Brass and delivered what Maya would later describe as the look. The kind of look that transcended species barriers and communicated universal concepts like, "Seriously? And this guy? And are you kidding me right now?" General Brass, blissfully unaware of his audience, continued explaining his tactical genius until the bear cleared its throat with a sound that resembled a diesel engine having an existential crisis. The general spun around, came face to face with 800 pounds of unimpressed apex predator, and discovered that his voice could reach octaves previously unknown to human vocal cords. Maya's laughter was interrupted by urgent communications from around the globe. The tide of battle had turned dramatically. Ambassador Klaxon's unstoppable. War beasts were retreating on every front, pursued by Earth creatures that seemed to view the alien invasion as an unwelcome interruption to their previously peaceful coexistence with humanity. Captain Fred announced, "I'm receiving a priority communication from Ambassador Klaxon. He requests immediate ceasefire negotiations." "Put him through," Maya said, still watching feeds of alien forces in full retreat while being pursued by everything from Arctic wolves to army ants. Klaxon's multiple eyes appeared on the screen, no longer gleaming with confident superiority. Instead, they held the kind of wide-eyed terror that suggested he'd just discovered that his understanding of galactic power structures needed some serious revision. "Captain Rodriguez," Klaxon's voice had lost all its previous pompous authority, "the Galactic Council wishes to discuss alternative arrangements regarding Earth status." "Oh, really?" Maya leaned back in her chair, watching a pack of dingoes coordinate an assault on a retreating Crystarch hunter with tactical precision that would have made military strategists weep with envy. What kind of alternative arrangements? Perhaps Earth would prefer to maintain its independence, in exchange for certain considerations regarding galactic security matters. Maya looked around at her command center, where Fred was displaying real-time footage of Earth's apex predators systematically dismantling what had been described as the galaxy's most feared military force. "I think we can arrange something," Maya said finally. "But the negotiations are going to have to include representatives from all of Earth's interested parties." "Meaning?" Maya grinned as a polar bear appeared on one of the communication screens, apparently having figured out how to operate human communication equipment. "Meaning you're going to be negotiating with every apex predator on the planet, Ambassador. I hope you're prepared for a very interesting conversation." 3 months after what historians would later call the day Earth's pets got tired of being ignored, but Maya found herself with a job title that made her want to hide in a bunker until the universe forgot she existed. "Planetary beast whisperer," she muttered, reading the official appointment letter for the 100th time. They actually put that on official government letterhead. "Captain," Fred announced from his upgraded mobile platform, "I feel compelled to point out that you are now the highest-ranked military officer in human history to hold a position that requires fluency in over 400 different species dialects." "Thanks, Fred. That makes it so much better." The Galactic Council had surrendered with a speed that broke several interstellar records for military capitulation. Ambassador Klaxon had returned with a diplomatic entourage that included representatives from 37 different civilizations, all of whom seemed extremely interested in establishing friendly relations with the Death World and its inhabitants. Maya's office in the newly constructed interspecies relations building overlooked a diplomatic quarter that looked like a cross between the United Nations and a particularly diverse zoo. Alien ambassadors conducted meetings while being politely but firmly supervised by various Earth creatures who had apparently appointed themselves as security consultants. A delegation from the crystalline hegemony was currently negotiating trade agreements under the watchful eye of a polar bear who had taken it upon himself to ensure that all negotiations remained civilized. The bear's presence had reportedly improved diplomatic efficiency by 300%, largely because nobody wanted to explain to their home government why they'd been mauled during trade talks. Maya, her human assistant, knocked on the door. "You have a video call from the Pacific Marine Council." Maya sighed and activated the communication system. Deep Thinker of the crushing depths appeared on screen, surrounded by several other massive cephalopods who served as the ocean's representative government. "Greetings, Skypack Leader Maya," Deep Thinker pulsed in greeting. "The Deep Councils have reviewed the Star Swimmer's proposal for mining rights in the outer dark waters. And? The proposal is acceptable, provided the Star Swimmers understand that the dark waters belong to the deep realms. Trespass penalties will be enforced with crushing certainty." Maya nodded, making notes on her tablet. Apparently, Earth's oceanic councils had decided that solar system mining rights fell under their jurisdiction, since space was just a different kind of deep water. The logic was questionable, but the results were effective. "I'll pass that along to the Galactic Mining Consortium," Maya said. "Anything else?" "The Star Swimmers from the ice worlds wish to establish what they call cultural exchange programs with the ice territories. The Polar Councils request your presence for territorial boundary discussions." Maya added another meeting to her schedule, somewhere between the Amazon Tactical Council's briefing on interplanetary pest control services and the African Savannah Alliance's presentation on security contracting opportunities. Earth's new reputation had spread through the galaxy with impressive speed. Other civilizations had begun requesting what they politely termed ecological consultation services, which Maya recognized as "please send your terrifying predators to deal with our problems." The requests ranged from reasonable to ridiculous. A mining colony wanted help with aggressive native fauna that was interfering with their operations. A luxury resort planet was dealing with uncooperative wildlife management issues. 3 different civilizations had submitted formal requests for Earth's assistance with what their translators described as planetary pest problems, but which Fred had identified as military conflicts they're losing. Maya, her assistant, returned, looking slightly overwhelmed. "The Australian Continental Defence Force wants to know if you approve their proposal to establish an off-world training facility for aggressive species management." Maya looked out her window at the diplomatic quarter, where a Pyrowing Destroyer that had apparently defected during the invasion was being given flying lessons by a wedgie-tailed eagle. The alien creature was struggling to master the complex aerial maneuvers that the eagle considered basic education. "Tell them yes," Maya said finally, "but make sure they include liability waivers. Comprehensive ones. Also, Maya, there's been a development with the Zephyrian Empire." Maya looked up with interest. The Zephyrians had been the primary architects of the invasion, and their response to Earth's victory had been notably absent from all diplomatic communications. "What kind of development?" "They've submitted a formal application to join Earth's Defense Alliance. Apparently, their homeworld is being threatened by something called the Void Devourers, and they're hoping Earth's biological warfare specialists might be available for consultation." Maya stared at her assistant, then at Fred, then at the diplomatic quarter where alien ambassadors were learning interspecies etiquette from Earth's apex predators. "Fred," she said finally, "what are the odds that we've accidentally become the galaxy's premier military contractor? Based on current diplomatic communications and service requests, and I estimate approximately 97% certainty that Earth has become the galactic equivalent of a security consulting firm specializing in biological warfare and pest control." Maya looked back at the Zephyrian application, noting that they'd included detailed intelligence reports on the Void Devourers and a payment offer that would fund Earth's space program for the next century. "You know what, Fred? I think I'm starting to like this job. Shall I schedule a consultation meeting with the Arctic Tactical Council regarding off-world deployment logistics?" Maya grinned as she watched a group of army ants conduct what appeared to be a training exercise with some kind of robotic construction equipment they'd somehow acquired from the alien diplomatic quarter. "Schedule it," she said. "And Fred?" "Yes, Captain?" "Start a file labeled Interstellar Pest Control Services. I have a feeling we're going to need it." Outside her window, Earth's newest role as the galaxy's most effective planetary defense contractor was just beginning, and Maya had to admit that it beat filing bureaucratic reports about military working dogs. Even if her business cards now read Planetary Beast Whisperer. Some jobs, she reflected, were worth the embarrassing titles.